Thank you for joining us for this sermon podcast from United Christian Church of Austin, where no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you're invited and welcome. Our sermon for Sunday, February 11th, 2018 is entitled Witness. It's a reflection on a reading from the book of 2 Kings, chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to learn more about our open and affirming ministry at United Christian Church, simply head over to our website, www.uccaustin.org. Thank you.
Our reading today comes from the Hebrew Bible, from the book of 2 Kings, chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. In all the Hebrew Bible, the prophet Elijah, who spoke hard truth to the dangerous power of the corrupt King Ahab, who was sustained by the ravens in the wilderness, who raised the dead, who encountered God's own self in the still small voice after the earthquake, wind, and fire, Elijah is deemed the prophet par excellence. In fact, when, in the course of the Gospels, Jesus asks his disciples what people are saying about him, they report that some believe he is Elijah come again. In our reading for today, Elijah knows that he is coming to the end of his life, and he is making that final journey by stages with his protege, Elisha. Now, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were out journeying from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "You stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, you stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "You stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted to the one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing, yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind up into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots and the cavalry of Israel." But when he could no longer see Elijah, he grasped his own clothes and tore them into two pieces. He picked up the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak of Elijah and struck the water, saying, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" When he had struck the water was parted to the one side and to the other, and Elisha went over. Friends, God is still speaking to the world. May our hearts be open to listen and to respond. Amen.
There are some Bible stories that get upstaged by their own miraculous content.
When Jonah gets swallowed up by that whale, the entire point of the rest of the story gets swallowed up right along with him. We can't think of anything else. When Jesus feeds 5,000 people, the disciples, at least in John's gospel, spend umpteen verses afterward mistakenly thinking all Jesus cares about is bread. And this account of the prophet Elijah's farewell tour, ending as it does with his being carried away into heaven by a fiery chariot, is this really just a story about supernatural pyrotechnics? Or is there more or less to it? Elijah is dying. He knows it. His protege, Elisha, knows it. Everybody seems to know it. And the mighty prophet of God decides to spend his last days visiting meaningful places in the salvation history of the people of Israel. Places associated especially with their experience of the holy. Gilgal, where after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites camped their first night in the land of promise. Bethel, a place of worship and home to the Ark of the Covenant and the relics of God's self-revelation at Sinai. And Jericho, site of their most spectacular military victory. At each stage along the way, Elijah offers his companion Elisha an easy way out, an escape clause, a chance to skip the difficulties ahead, all the grief and the pain of his passing. And it's not like the world outside of their little bubble has stopped turning either, just to let the prophet die in peace. Bad kings may have passed away, but worse ones have risen up to take their place. New challenges constantly replace old ones. But still, the younger prophet walks alongside him, despite knowing or fearing exactly how uncomfortable what lies ahead will be. The text makes Elisha's persistence almost comically clear, as at each stop a chorus of prophets pop out from the wings to ask him, "Hey, you do know Elijah's about to die, right?" And at each stop, Elisha answers them, "Yes, I do. Now hush." And he answers Elijah as well, "As the Lord lives and as you yourself live." In other words, not on your life will I turn back. I will not leave you. I will see this through. I will see you through. Finally, the two reach the banks of the Jordan River. And I imagine that the temptation was pretty strong to remain there on the near bank, where the prophetic groupies, and let Elijah go on alone to do what he had to do. After all, it's his death, it's Elijah's death, it's not Elisha's. But Elisha has a sense that something important is about to happen, even if it's just the passing of his dear friend and mentor. I say just because, well, death and loss, that's the very most usual thing there is in the way of the world. People are dying, things are passing away, everything, all the time. It's hardly worth noticing or worth putting yourself out to endure the unpleasantness if you don't have to until it's your turn. Still, Elisha sticks close and lends his arm to support his failing friend. Until at last, Elijah asks just what it is that Elisha is hoping for in this very most human moment. What it is he's hoping will happen. What's he supposed to say? Long, awkward pause before Elisha drops to his knees. All the pain and grief and wonder and hope and fear rushing out of him all at once. More. I want more. I want more life for you and for me. I want more spirit. Your spirit, the glory of God that I've seen at work in your life. I want it repeated and repeated in mine. A life lived close to the holy the way you have. More life, more time, more. This is supposed to be Elijah's moment, but Elisha is left undone, utterly, head cast down, sputtering, tears spattering his cheeks as he feels the old man's gnarled hand resting on the top of his head in benediction. Keep watching, dear one. Watch closely. That's where the good stuff is. When Elisha lifts his eyes once more, just in time to catch the shadow of his mentor passing away, glory. Even there, even then, in that moment, glory. Something like a chariot, but not. Like horses, but not. Like flames and a mighty whirlwind, and the old man transfigured before him and translated. Elisha's heart likes to boil over and melt in his chest at the very sight of it all, leaving him gasping for breath, eyes wide and lifted to the sky. His dear friend now gone, now just an after image etched on his heart. Elisha stumbles to his feet as the horizon swims slowly into focus once more. Did he, and is he, did they, am I? Glory. Elisha gathers up Elijah's fallen mantle, rolls up the battered cloak just like the old man used to, and strikes the water of the river Jordan, glory, and crosses over back into the world and back to the work once more, back to the living and the dying, back to the evil kings and the poor widows and the afflicted in need of comforting and the comfortable in need of afflicting, back to life, taking the memory of all of that glory, all of that utterly humanness and more with him. Friends, it's my strong belief that God is doing miraculous things, life-giving, life-changing things around us all the time. That glory is erupting every day in even the most unlikely places and definitely the most unlikely people. But it's not for the casual observer to notice. We have to be looking for it. Even looking at it may not be enough. Right in front of our eyes, even looking right at it, we may miss the good stuff entirely. Because God's miracles don't ask for an audience, standing at a safe distance away, ready with a round of polite applause before they move on to the next act. God's glory rather requires witnesses. Witnesses who will stick with it, who will slog through the tough stuff, the ordinary stuff, to get to the good stuff, who will look past what is merely entertaining or distracting in hopes of catching a glimpse of what is truly miraculous, who will see the world for what it really is, God's biggest and best and smallest and most awesome of miracles unfolding day by day. Every day in the all-too-human cycle of life and death, of struggles and joys of everyday people, even in our own lives. God's glory is already being revealed if we would only slow our pace to match velocity with God, to stick with it, and to take notice. Where have you been surprised to find the glory of God slipping in over the horizon of your own life, creeping in around the edges, or in fact, splitting open the heavens and coming right on down on an otherwise ordinary day? The world we live in is half-cracked already. But as songwriter and poet Leonard Cohen used to like to say, that's how the light gets in. That's how the Spirit gets in, and the glory. In the deaths of old men, in the cries of newborn babies, in the ragged breath of those who struggle, in the last gasps of empire, in the songs of those who yearn for freedom, in our parents, and in our children, and in our neighbors and our neighborhoods, and our nation, in our friends, and in our enemies. There is nothing and no one so mundane, so ordinary, that it cannot communicate the glory of God at work in the world. If only we would be witnesses. Witnesses who witness, and then witness to others what we have witnessed. Because that is the prophet's call. Not just grandiose gestures and a bunch of abracadabra, but persistence in witnessing. The persistence to stick with it, even in those uncomfortably close moments when pain and grief threaten to swallow us up, especially then. In order to see and hear and smell and taste and touch the everyday glory of God. And then to share what we have witnessed. As those who follow in the prophetic footsteps of Elijah and Elisha and John, called the baptizer, and of Jesus, this is our call too. We are called to be witnesses to everyday glory. To wipe the tears from our eyes, to dust ourselves off and take up our master's mantle from wherever we find it lying beside the road, and put it on for ourselves and go on and go out and do the very same sort of everyday miracles in God's name. Little miracles, tiny wonders, the human stuff, the good stuff, the relationships, the risk-taking, the truth-telling, the loving and being loved, so that others may witness the grace-filled glory of God at work in our own lives here, by the messy, muddy verge of Jordan. And after us, others, and still others after them, and on and on and on, until the world is filled with the glory of God. Not just in the expected places, the important places, the places of history and tradition, the Gilgals and Bethels and Jerichos, not just the rarefied mountaintops and the every once in a great whiles, but the whole wide world, every day and every way and everyone, filled to overflowing with the glory of God as the waters fill the sea. In the season of Lent that lies ahead of us, we are called to follow Jesus, to watch close. Though, in fact, we may be tempted to turn aside, to wait and to watch from a comfortable distance as he walks with purpose towards his own uncomfortable end. But if we do that, we will miss out. If we skip to the end, if we read the final chapter first, we run the risk of letting the pyrotechnics of that marvelous Easter resurrection ending obscure the deeper point of the story, the point that is made page by painful page, that there is no place so terrible and banal and so utterly and awfully human that the glory of God cannot be found there. Even there. Not even the cross. There is no place we cannot see the glory of God at work, walking with us and working to turn the world right side up once more and be blessed by it. If only we will stick with it. If only we will watch close. If only we will be witnesses. And so, friends, if you've heard the word of God preached here today, remember to give all honor and glory to our one God, Creator, Christ, and Holy Spirit. Amen.